Okay, so we're going to dip our toes a little bit into animation now. So we're going to start up a new composition, and we'll make it HDTV 1080-25, and I'll call this Bouncing Things. And we'll also set it to a 10-second duration. Say OK. And then I'm going to import some stuff. So I'm going to import an image sequence. So you will find this in Activity 511, Soccer Ball Sequence. And just click on the first image and it'll say Targa Sequence. So Targa is just another image format that records transparency. So I'll make sure it's on Targa Sequence and open. And it's going to ask me what to do with transparency or the alpha matte. I'm going to say straight unmatted and say OK. Then I'm just going to click and press enter and call this spinning ball. And if I just double click on it and press the space bar, you'll see that all it is a spinning ball with transparency. So if I press this button here, toggle transparency grid, you can see that there's transparency there. Okay, so I'm also going to make sure the frame rate is right, and I want it to just loop over and over again and not just to spin once. So I'm going to right click and choose Interpret Footage, Main, and I want to change the frame rate to 25 frames a second, and I want to set the loop. I'm just going to set it to loop quite a few more times than I need, so I'm just going to say 50 times and OK. Alright, so let's go down here to our comp. So I'm going to double click here, Bouncing Things, and then I'm going to take the spinning ball, drag it, place it there, and I'm going to press S to scale, and I'm just going to scale it down to 45%. Then I'm going to press P for position, and on the y-axis I want to move it up to 250. Okay, so that's the soccer ball, spinning ball, ready. So if I just play my composition here, you'll see the ball's just there waiting and spinning. I'm also going to import a balloon. So we have this balloon PNG, and I'm going to drag it in here. It's pretty big, so S to scale, and I'm just going to scale it down relative to the soccer ball to about that size, and I'm just going to drag it into position over here. Okay, and then one more, I'm going to import bowling ball and pop that down here. Ooh. I think it's huge, so let's just scale. I was wondering what was going on for a moment there. Let's scale our bowling ball down a bit. Okay, and we're going to position it over here. So now the background's black, and so things are not showing up so well against that background. So I'm just going to right click here, say New, Solid, and let's say Make Comp Size, and let's choose a color that these are going to read better against. So I'm just going to go for a kind of off-white, kind of yellowish color. See what that looks like, and put that at the bottom. Okay, looks fine. So we're going to start with a spinning ball, and we want to animate the position so it's bouncing up and down. So I'm going to take my playhead, make sure it's at 0 seconds. So over here it says 0, and I'm going to select the spinning ball layer, press P, and that puts my position property here. Now the little stopwatch is what I need to activate in order to record my first keyframe. So I'm going to click on the stopwatch, and you'll see that it adds a little blue diamond shape here that's telling me there's a keyframe, and it's telling me it's selected. So if I click away, that's an unselected keyframe. If I click on it, that's a selected keyframe. Also, if I take my playhead and put it over that keyframe, you'll see over here, this is called the Keyframe Shuttle, and when the little diamond is blue in the middle, that means you are on a keyframe that is selected. So this is the position that the ball is going to start at. It's also the position it's going to end at. So I'm just going to go to 1 second. So I can drag my playhead, but I can also just go to this time indicator here, and I can type 1.1 enter. That takes me to 1 second. And I'm just going to duplicate that keyframe. So there's two ways you can do it. You can either click on the original keyframe so it's blue and press Command or Control C to copy and Command or Control V to paste. That copies that keyframe to where the playhead is. Or, I'm just going to undo that, or you can go to your Keyframe Shuttle and you can just click on the diamond to say make a keyframe there. So we now have a keyframe at 0 seconds, a keyframe at 1 second, holding that ball in the same position. So nothing's happening at the moment. So we're going to go halfway. So halfway between 0 and 1 second at 25 frames a second is actually 12.5. We can't go to 12.5 frames. We can only go to 12 frames or 13 frames. So I'm just going to click here and type 12. Okay, and then I'm going to change the Y value for position so that the ball is touching the bottom of the screen. So notice the way if my playhead is anywhere on the timeline and I change a value for something that has the stopwatch on, it automatically generates a keyframe. What you do not want to do is take the stopwatch off. Once you put it on, you leave it on because it's now recording keyframes. So now I have this animation of the ball bouncing, but I want it to continue to bounce over and over again. So I could copy and paste keyframes all the way along, but that's quite a schlep to do. So I'm going to use expressions. So expressions is a programming language that comes with After Effects. It's based on JavaScript, and it's far too advanced for us to learn it's way beyond the scope of this particular After Effects course. But we can still use expressions just by using pre-built expressions. So we don't actually have to type the language, we just have to choose. So in order to activate expressions for a particular animated property, in this case position, what we do is hold down Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click on the stopwatch. And you'll see that it opens up the expressions bar, and it automatically writes expressions in here. So I don't want to write my own expressions because I don't know how to do that. I'm going to just choose an expression. So I'm going to go to this arrow, and I'm going to go to Property, Loop Out, Type equals Cycle, Num Keyframes equals 0. So I just happen to know that that is going to cause my keyframes to just cycle over and over again for the full 10 seconds. So what you want to do now is you don't want to press enter because that will take you to a new line of expressions. You just want to click away, and that expression is now built. So if I play this now, so press my space bar, you'll see the ball continues to bounce even though I've only got 3 keyframes. Alright, so that's how expressions work. You don't necessarily have to know how to work with expressions, and there's also websites where you can go and find expressions that do certain things and copy and paste the code. But you know, there's not that much at this stage that you're going to need to do with them. So this is just one little trick that I'm showing you. So the thing with this is that the animation is not very realistic, because if you think of how a ball is going to actually work with gravity, it's going to start off slow, it's going to build up speed, its maximum speed will be as it hits the ground, it's then going to shoot back up at a high speed, and it's going to slow down when it gets to the peak. So I want that animation to be more realistic. So I can use something called easing. So easing is basically changing the animation between keyframes from linear to a curve. So linear just means it's the same acceleration from one keyframe to the next. If I create a curve, it means it starts off slow, speeds up, I can control how it accelerates. So you'll see that I have these 3 keyframes here, and if you think of these keyframes as train stations, and the playhead is the train. So if the train is leaving the first station, it's going to leave slow. So it's going to ease out of the station. So I'm going to go here and right click and say Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease Out. And you can see that the diamond gets a little notch in it on the side where the easing is happening. It's actually like a little curve. Then it's going to go to the last keyframe where it's going to ease into the station. So it's not just going to stop suddenly, it's going to gradually slow down and ease into the station. So for the last keyframe, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease in. Okay, so let's play that back now and let's see the difference. Okay, it's a much more realistic animation, but what I want to actually control it even more than that. So I don't just want basic easing, I want it to be a little bit exaggerated so the animation is more eye-catching. So if you want to customize your curves, your animation curves, more than what easing is going to allow you to, then you have to use the graph editor. So I'm going to click on the position property, and then I'm going to click on this button, which will open the graph editor. I'm just going to make this bigger so that you can see what's going on. And then I'm just going to drag over these keyframes here, and I'm going to click on this button, which is just going to zoom into that area. So you can see that this is a graphical representation of the animation. Nothing is happening on the x-axis, so red is always x, but on the y-axis we're going from 250 pixels all the way down to the bottom. So weirdly, the y value starts with 0 at the top and ends with 1080 at the bottom. So that's why this looks inverted, but that's just the way it works. So what I want to do is I want to exaggerate the y curve, because you can see this easing here, this easing is quite shallow. So when you look at these curves, think of it as a roller coaster. If you're on a roller coaster, the flatter the track, the slower you go. The steeper the track, the faster you go. So you can see it starts off slowly and then speeds up, and then it ends off slowly, but I want to exaggerate that. So I'm going to separate these two dimensions. The problem with that is it's going to break my expression, so that's fine, I'll put it in again afterwards. So I'm going to click on this button which says separate dimensions. So now I've got my x and my y over here as separate dimensions that I can animate. So I'm going to focus on the y. I'm going to take this keyframe here, and I'm going to go to this button that says easy ease. So it adds that handle, and I'm going to drag that handle while holding shift to keep it in a straight line to exaggerate the curve. So it starts off very slowly and then picks up speed. Then here at the end I'm going to select also easy ease and then drag holding shift so that it keeps in a straight line, because you don't want to do that because that's going to make the ball go back up again. You want to keep it in a straight line. Okay, then here I'm going to click on that middle keyframe and also easy ease, but now I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, and I'm going to change just one side to make it sharp, and then let go of Alt or Option and change the other side. So now I have a really exaggerated, let me actually do this even more here. A really exaggerated animation. Starts off slow, gets faster, 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 hits the ground hard, comes back up fast, and then slow, slow, slow to a stop. That should give me a much, much nicer animation. So I'm going to click on the graph editor again, and I'm just going to make this area bigger, and let's just have a look at what this looks like now. But remember, just need to look at my full 10 seconds. Remember that it broke my expression because I've separated my dimensions. So I need to put that again in for just the y-axis. So Alt or Option, click on the stopwatch for y, go to your expression menu, property, loop out, type equals cycle, num keyframes equals 0. And then you can just click away down here. So let's see what that looks like now. Okay, much, much nicer, almost cartoon style animation, exaggerated motion. Looks much, much better. Okay, so once you've got to this point here, you want this to have some kind of motion blur so that it looks more realistic, because when things are traveling fast, they tend to blur, especially if you're using certain types of cameras. So what I want to do is over here I want to click on toggle switches and modes so that I can see all of my switches, and for my spinning ball layer, I want to click underneath this column, which is motion blur. Okay, and if I now just go to a point where it's going really fast, you'll see that I get a really nice motion blur. So if I play it back, okay, it's just slowed down a little bit because it's got to render that motion blur. So you can see the green line is telling me it's still busy rendering. Once it gets to 10 seconds, it'll play back in actual real time. Okay, now it's playing back properly. So you can see that motion blur really makes it look nice. Alright, so at this point you're going to save this, and then what you're going to do on your own for practice is you're going to lock the spinning ball layer and you're going to work on the balloon layer from 0 seconds, and you're going to animate how you think a balloon is going to interact with gravity. So if we just release that balloon at 0 seconds, how is it going to fall to the ground? So you're going to imagine it falling maybe slowly. It's not a balloon that floats, so it's not going to go up. It's a balloon full of normal air. So it's going to float down slowly. When it touches the ground, it might bounce once, just a little bit, and then it might roll off or something like that. So see how you can do with that. So the process of keyframing is exactly the same for all your properties. For position, rotation, I don't think you'll need anything more than that at the moment. Then the bowling ball is a completely different kettle of fish. It's heavy and it's solid. So when it hits the ground, it's going to have a very small bounce, and then it's just going to stop and maybe just roll a little bit. So I want you to experiment with this. This is really about you getting used to the controls for animation and how they work. Once you've finished doing your other two animations, so you've got your spinning ball first, and then over 10 seconds, how the balloon is going to animate, how the bowling ball is going to animate, you're going to save this, and then you're going to render out a movie file. So you're going to make sure this comp area is selected. You're going to go to Composition, Add to Adobe Media Encoder, Q. You're going to wait for that to open. Okay, so now it's open. You're going to make sure it's on H.264. Choose YouTube 1080p 8 full HD, and then set your destination. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and see you next time.